right, guys, now that we've got this thing wired up, we're gonna light up our little LED. So let's do a little check first, make sure that we've got this wired correctly. So what should be happening is we've got our feed wire coming in. We haven't dealt with that yet. Coming into this box, we've got a neutral coming into each side. We've got a hot or a neutral coming in and going out. Sorry. We've got a hot coming in and going out on the other side. And we've got our ground wire that is the two ground wires wire netted together with one coming out and hooked to the ground side. We should have our light switch with our hot in and hot out. It doesn't matter which one they go into. If you have a neutral wire on one of these and the hot wire in the other, you've just created a short circuit. I can't go over that enough, and you need to go back and watch those other videos again because you messed up. So you should have black and black. We should have a wire nut with a ground wire coming out of it that's hooked up, and our two neutrals hooked together kind of down into the bottom of the box. We've got our now we've got our receptacle with this little receptacle plug that goes into the light switch screwed in there, and on the back side should be a black wire going to brass, the neutral wire going to silver, and the ground wire that was in there is just kind of shoved down into the bottom of the box to make sure that it doesn't make contact with these metal parts. Okay, and they're all just sort of sitting there floating up above the boxes, which is fine. And now we're going to get going with actually lighting up the LED. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got to deal with the LEDs. In your kit somewhere is a couple of batteries, either AA or AAA. Mine are AAA. You've got a couple of wire holders to hold those wires with wires sticking out of them. You've got 3 LEDs in case you mess those up. You'll only need one for this. And you're going to need your little alligator clip wire that may be different colors. So again, you may also have AA batteries instead of AAA like mine, but this is all going to work. Now, I originally in the plans was going to have you put in also a breaker within part of this, and that's the way it works in a real system. In a real residential system, in your breaker panel, you have breakers, right? So on the positive side where the power comes in, it goes through that breaker and then goes and feeds the circuit. It's a little tedious to deal with these things, so I've decided that I'm going to leave that out, at least for now. But, you know, you can take a look at the breaker and know how they work. So this little clamp right here is what clamps onto your breaker panel into what's coming in hot, and then it goes out through your circuit through this little screw over here. And so what happens is there's a little switch in here. It's usually a thermal switch. Sometimes they're magnetic. That when there is when this is on, it's got power going through it, feeding the circuit. If too much amperage draw, over 15 amps, actually maybe a little more, goes through there, then that switch shuts off inside of it and it breaks that breaker and does not allow power to go through it. So that said, I think we're going to take that and set it aside just because it'll be too tedious to deal with. All right. Now, I know you want to have fun with the LEDs and the batteries and stuff, so let's talk about how to do that. Let's talk about the rules that are really, really important. First of all, you're not going to shock yourself. It's a maximum of 3 volts. You can't do that, right? So it's not about safety. It's about making sure you do things right and not burning up your holders. So listen to me very carefully. If you short circuit your battery, what's going to happen is you are going to melt this little part where the spring is of your battery holder, and then it's going to make this thing unusable. And if you do that, you're going to have to figure out a way of using rubber bands and wires and other things to hook these batteries up, because I am not going to provide you with more of these. So we already looked at your circuit to make sure you're not short-circuiting anything. You have to make sure that you're not short-circuiting your battery. Here's how you short-circuit a battery. is you have your battery in the battery holder and you touch these two ends together, or it's connected to things that are hooked together with no resistance, no LED, no nothing. And so there's a electron flow just going crazy through here, right? And it's heating that up because you've short circuited it, and that heat will melt that part of the battery holder. So I've warned you, if you do it, it's your fault. You didn't check things. You didn't pay attention to me. Like even right now, I'm getting those little curled ends are kind of close to each other, and I need to make sure that I'm keeping them apart. When you're not using the batteries, I would recommend that you pop those out of there. Sometimes they're a little hard to pop out. You can use your screwdriver or something else to kind of help pry that out of. Well, I'm going to have to get my screwdriver out of there to make sure that you're not accidentally, when you set this down, these accidentally touch each other and create that short circuit. All right. Rule number 2 is very important. These wire ends are very, very fragile, and they're there because I made sure that all of them had a little wire sticking out. If you are not gentle with these little wire ends, they're going to break off, and then you're going to have to try to use the smallest part of this to strip a little bit more wire off, and it's really hard to do that because it's really fragile. And this one actually doesn't even get small enough, so you have to kind of turn it a little bit and try and get that out of there and strip a little bit of wire off. So please be gentle with those things. Okay, so those are the 2 main rules. Now, let's talk about your LED a little bit and talk about how your LED works, and then you're going to play a little bit before we hook that up because I know you want to. So let's talk about that thing. An LED is a light emitting diode. Okay, so that means a diode is an electrical component that only allows electrons to flow through it in one direction or it won't work. So you have this longer wire on your LED that's called an anode, and this other wire called a cathode. It must be that the positive comes into the anode and the negative goes to the cathode, or it won't work. Okay, so that's really important that you understand that. So if you hook it up the wrong way, you might think that you're not doing it right, but you've made your LED have the wrong polarity. So when you hook this up, or when you put it into your light socket receptacle thing, you've got to make sure that this is the hot side. All right, now that said, let's talk about how your LED works. So this is why you have 2 batteries. These guys don't function. These green LEDs don't function on 1.5 volts. So if I touch these guys on the legs, nothing happens because it's not enough. So we're going to have to put these batteries together. Now, this is where we need to learn about wiring in parallel versus wiring in series. Series means that you've taken the batteries and you've combined them together so that the power flows through both of them. Okay, and what happens when you do that? You go from positive to negative to positive, and you can do even more than that. It will combine all of those voltages. So for our little batteries, we've got each one is 1.5 volts. If you wire them in series, that will create 3 volts. Okay. If you wire something in parallel, which means you put the batteries next to each other and the power can flow either through one or the other, then what you're doing is you're keeping the same voltage, but the batteries will last twice as long. Okay, so that's what the difference is. We need to wire in series. You're going to put both batteries in the battery holders and make sure that your negative side of the battery is against the spring where the black wire is, and your positive side of the battery, where that little nub is on the battery, is on the red side. Now, we are going to take one of the battery holders, and we're going to take these 2 wires, the positive. I'm not creating short circuit because I'm not creating any kind of path for things to flow in. And we're going to gently twist those guys together. And again, if you break the wires, then you're going to have to try to, okay, I'm just going to put those together just like that. Okay, now that I've created a pair of batteries in series, so I'm coming negative, positive, and then negative and positive. Now, when I put my positive on the anode and my negative on the cathode, I get, these two little guys came apart in the middle. You can try using a wire nut on those if you want to, or putting a little piece of tape on it might help it out. Masking tape is great for this kind of stuff, just to help hold those two things together. So if you got some tape around, one of the things that might help you, although I think I can just sort of twist this around. And of course, I just broke off so this video is good for all sorts of problems here. So I'm going to have to try and strip off a little bit. This is hard to do because that little wire in there wants to catch on things. So there we go. I have to wiggle the wire a little bit. All right, let's try that again. I'll twist these guys together. All right. And I didn't have masking tape, but I had some Scotch tape, so I put a little piece of Scotch tape on there just to help hold that together. Masking tape would probably be better. Now, I'm going to make sure I've got my anode is the longer one, my cathode is the shorter one, and while I've got the batteries in series, I can light up the LED. Cool. So, wow, that doesn't look good on the camera. It just makes a big blotch. That's okay. Okay, now, if I do this the other way, I hope I don't ruin the LED. Notice the LED doesn't work because I am putting the negative to the anode and the positive to the cathode. So again, you have to make sure you do this, the right way, okay? Or it won't work. And you'll think you're doing something wrong when really you just got it wired backwards. Cool. Okay, so we're ready to make our switch work. Next thing is you're going to take your circuit, your boxes and stuff, and you need to expose some wire on the end. I'm going to do some things a little different than I would have before. So now I'm going to need to strip a couple inches off of this because all I'm doing is using this to connect. So again, you're going to just take a little bit of that sheathing off there. It doesn't need to be a lot. And strip off just a little bit. It doesn't need to be that full thumbnail width this time. We're just gonna use just a little bit just to hook up our battery to. Ta-da! Now, I was going to have you hook up the ground wire and neutral wire together on this end because in a standard service panel, that's what happens. Your ground wire and your neutral wire are going to the same bus bar. But I'm going to just have you leave the ground wire out of the picture for now. Just kind of fold it back so you've got those, just those two wires sticking out. We're going to use those. Now, here's where I'm going to have you use a wire nut. So we've got to be kind of careful again that we're not breaking things. And we're going to hook this guy up. Now we're going to hook up the black side of the batteries. Black is negative in the low voltage system, and I know it's usually hot in the in our 110 system, so you kind of have to ignore that difference for a bit. And we're going to hook up the negative to the neutral, okay? And that is going to be attached with a wire nut. Just be gentle when you do this. Make sure they're lined up on the end, and I'm kind of doing this by feel to make sure that they're stuck together, and I'm going to twist that on there just gently this time. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on it because if you really crank on it, you're going to break that little line off. Give just a slight little pull on that wire to make sure that it's in there. That's cool. Now we're going to take this little alligator clip guy and hook it to the other end so that now we've got essentially a switch. Okay, when I hook the wire to this, it will run power through the circuit. When I take it off, it will not run power through the circuit. Now, we want to do a little test, make sure that that you haven't messed anything up in here in this circuit. We can hook these guys together for a moment and feel your batteries. Feel the battery power. If you feel it starting to get hot, take that off and go look at your circuit. You did something wrong. Okay, there shouldn't be any power flow through these things right now, because whether the switch is off or on, turn the switch on. Feel the battery for a second. If it's heating up, then you short circuited where the switch is. Okay, so it shouldn't matter because there's no power going through. All right, now I hope I can zoom out here and let's see if I can get all of this into the picture. Cool, I think I can. Okay, bear with me to get this. All right, so right now I have things hooked up the right way. Now, here's the fun part. You're going to take your battery, or your LED. Now, it's important to know which one, again, is the long one. The longer side is going to go in the hot, right? So you're going to have to bend it around a little bit and bend it so it's got kind of a little separation, but it's 90 degrees. And you're going to put those kind of down inside there. Now, you have to feel it a little bit to make sure that it's making contact, because what might happen is that you stick those wires down in there and they're not hitting any metal, which means that it's not going to contact and make work. So fingers crossed, I've got everything hooked up over here. When I turn on the switch, I have an LED going on and off. Now, if it doesn't work, let me see if I can get it to not work. Yeah, see, right now it's not working, and it's not because the circuit doesn't work. It's because I need to make sure that that is making contact. So if it's not lighting up, just move those legs around a little bit till you get it where you're sure that those little pieces, there we go, are making contact down inside of that little receptacle. On a side note, you can also take your LED and whether the light switch is on or off, again, long leg into the, and you should, as long as I got it making contact, see, this is where you should be able to put it into the receptacle and have it work, whether the light switch is on or off. So can kind of mess with your LEDs that way. All right, so your last job will be to take a selfie with your face and all this stuff in it with the LED lit up so you can prove that you got it done. Hope that was fun and that you feel a little sense of accomplishment, and that we're done with semester 1, folks. Congratulations. See you in January.